There we go. It is the 8th of August, 2024. This is WIKISPEED Stand-Up. Go ahead, Lauren.
That's Lauren Salter, Gabriel Island, British Columbia, Canada. And I, past week, basically a few hours this afternoon, looking at the Tiziano Ross videos, and also kind of checking out. I checked out his portal that he has now, and it appeared. Well, I'll talk in crosstalk my conclusions, but anyway, that set me off on a quest for more up to date opportunities too, and I made some conclusions, and I found my glue gun, and it hasn't been used in a long time, so I'm going to be asking in crosstalk for advice, getting it working. So that's it for me, pretty much. Oh yeah, coming week then get the webcam working so that you don't have to save the meetings always, and make some progress with two tracks. Tiziano following through with his he's on Kinetic. He's still on Kinetic in the video. That and so I'll do that and install that. So my plan is to install Kinetic and maybe the latest ROS 2 on another, maybe another virtual machine, something like that. See if I can get somewhere with switching out environments, and continue research on what I'm looking for is a front end for ROS. If anybody started to do that, which I imagine they have, that simplifies it.
Are you talking about a GUI, or are you talking about a like configuring ROS, or running your robot, or running the
A little
simulator?
bit
Or
in parallel with kind of the IDEs for software
hmm.
that kind of just I've seen it happen with other things. So you like initially on the big databases, there was a thing called Spark, and then there was a whole lot of front ends. So it was very technical, working with what are they called? Let's talk in crosstalk. But anyway,
Okay.
yeah. And so the coming week, anyway, I'll do that. And blocks are just a bunch of things going on at once. The garden and got a few things going, but I'm pretty consistently spending time on this, so I would call them a moderate block, and yeah, I'll ask for help with things that are really blocking me. And back to you.
Okay. It's Michael Olchuk, Saskatoon, Canada. This past week, I got a little bit of work, or a little bit of progress on the Maslow's 4 CNC. I found a project command in the open SCAD program, which lets you load up a file, which is like an STL file, or a 3D printer file. And it lets you choose what height you want to use. Nominally, it's the bottom, but you can change that, and then you can convert that to an SVG, or a scalable vector graphics file, which that can then be used by a couple of other packages that make the G code that moves the router around and cuts things out. So I can cut parts of stuff that are 3D, or that were intended to be made with a 3D printer. I can cut them out of plywood, or um, K3 board, or whatever it is that I'm using. But I think it makes the CNC machine a whole lot more useful if it can cut things out instead of using a 3D printer for everything else. I also searched through the Maslow forums and I found that there is a recommended adapter to convert the 1/4 inch router to use 1/8 inch bits. So it's just like a little adapter. They sell you like 6 of them for $20. So I ordered it and it'll be here next Wednesday. And I read through the forums and found out that there are the Z-axis rails that are on the kit are about 1/8 of an inch too long, and that's why I had trouble putting it together. So, unfortunately, that means taking everything apart, cutting the rods, and then putting it back together. But it sounds like that's basically the only thing you can do if you want it to fit properly. People actually broke their brackets because the rods were too long. And then finally, I located my brad nailer and a few extra router bits. So, um, in last week's update, I said that I had found a spray can that I could use. It's about the same diameter as the router, so I can put my little um, Dremel knockoff tool inside it and then slide that whole thing in instead of the router. Um, so I'm using that to hopefully cut things a little bit quieter. The router really howls. I actually got a complaint from the guys next door. So I was doing it in the shed, and I turned the router on and the shop vac, and I had hearing protection on because it's really loud. And even with the doors closed and everything, they still heard it inside their cabin. So that's how loud it is. So the Dremel tool isn't exactly quiet, but it's a whole lot less noisy than that. So maybe if I can use the Dremel, it will be acceptable, and I can get some work done in the evenings, and not bother people too bad. I have one other thing I got done, which is on the Polaris project. I removed the throttle from the second Polaris, and I threw it into the Polaris test, and I'm still getting the same error code from the controller. So unfortunately, it's probably the controller that's broken and not the throttle. But I am going to try the other two throttles anyway because that's the cheapest way to go forward. Next week, I am hoping to get Tatiano's videos watched. I'll remove the throttles from the other two Polarises, and uh, hopefully I'll get README written up or something. Blocks, scheduled visitors at the lake. Some of my project stuff has to get put away when we have company because normally it's inside a bedroom, and if we're using the bedroom, obviously they don't want that stuff. Anyway, back to you.
Okay, so I give myself a 8, a team of 10. Lots going on, and process improvement actually is to somebody summarize what we've done and what and skills we want. So I can add that to my tasks. And back to you.
Okay, I got 6 points done. I was expecting 4, so I got to give myself a 10, and I will give the team a 10 as well. Getting stuff done. Process improvement. I'm not really sure that's a process improvement. But we really need to reach out. So maybe what you suggested, maybe getting a summary sent out so that people know what it is we're doing and they can choose to help or choose to participate if they want to. I guess that's about it. Do you want to record any crosstalk?
I got a feeling you're kind of ready to go now.
No, my wife is decided that we're going to be eating supper here, so
Okay.
I've got time.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So to your question about No, I was talking about. Well, number one, there was a thing about what gazebo is and what I'm looking for versus what I'm looking for. So, yeah, I just want. I want it to be more like the idea is it's like supposed to be like Android. Well, a couple of things. Yeah, it's supposed to be a generic thing, and Ross is that. It's a generic thing. It's not it as opposed to the proprietary phone systems that existed at the beginning of smartphones. But yeah, it is sort of a GUI that I'm looking for. Like, well, you know what I want is like in Arduino. Arduino has those drag and drop things that also generate code. I
Okay.
think. I think they do. So there was a thing. I'm trying to remember the name. It was like microcontroller uh, programming language.
Okay.
But anyways, it has some uh, GUI like things that allow you to quickly. Now, I always want code, so but there are some tools that where you drag and drop and it generates code, so you can jump back and forth from the GUI to code. So
So are you looking at it so that you can like define you start up your simulator,
yeah,
and then you run the code that's supposed to be on the Raspberry Pi. You run that on the VM on the simulator, and then the stuff that's on your laptop just runs normally, like it's connected up to what you're going to have your robot doing.
um, okay. So you got the simulator. Would be nice if you could just like make the simulator do what you want, and then it would reverse and yeah, create the ROS kind of code. So as of now, you have the ROS code and it simulates what you put in, right?
Yep.
But I'm wondering if there's anything like you can uh, describe what you want and kind of work in the simulator. Um, okay, I'm just brainstorming here, but for example, where I got to with Python, I was looking at Python data a little bit, and
Hmm.
where I got to was Python. You There's a thing called notebooks. There's a thing called Jupyter Notebook.
Okay.
So say you're writing a report on data.
Okay.
What Jupyter Notebook does is the back end has a back end so that you can start to write your report and then imagine a um, there's a graph or a table you want. It um, it then generates the Python and you can jump in and modify it or whatever. But you kind of work from the finished product backwards. So what I'm thinking is the simulator or visualizer that you can then make it do things, and then or at least it goes both ways. You can jump in ROS and do stuff, or you can uh, manipulate, say, or do a kind of a description or drag and drop a behavior that you want, and it'll generate something like a code that will do that.
Okay. So there's a podcast called Articulated Robotics,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
he goes through with Gazebo, and he makes like almost like a test environment.
And it's called articulated robotics.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So he defines his robot, and then he defines the environment, and he puts blocks in the way, and he defines walls and stuff like that. And he doesn't get too complicated, but there's a couple of things that are too low for the sonar to catch, and then there's a couple of things for him to run into, right?
Right.
Um, and then he's the guy that's really into doing, what the heck are they called? They're not packages. They're called
So it's you're thinking of Docker, but there's a
Docker.
generic.
Yes, he's a
Yeah.
he's
Okay.
a he's very into Docker. So I I don't actually understand whether he's into Docker because he uses Docker on the simulator, or whether he uses Docker to develop, or perhaps both. Sometimes it's a little hard to keep up with him,
So
but
yeah, in my reading, you like I was looking at a thing called um, discourse as opposed to Discord. So I was looking at the forum. Somebody was not happy with the Ross forums, and somebody else said, "Well, the discourse, and not to be confused with the Discord, but they both exist," and he recommended them both. So I looked at discourse,
okay.
Ross discourse, which and there was an interesting discussion about that. It's a research community. Ross is essentially a research community, which makes it frustrating for newbies who are trying to get into it, because the forum is not too useful. There's not too many people who have the time to explain it to newbies. Anyway, they recommended the discourse and the Discord, the
Okay.
ROS discourse and the ROS Discord. And I was reading the ROS discourse, and it had a thing about it actually had a thing where it recommended. It said use. It wasn't quite. Yeah, it recommended a version of ROS 2, and it recommended a gazebo version, which you call Harmonic, I think the latest one. And it recommended an operating system, which they recommended 22. So like Ubuntu's on 2404, they recommended 22. And it said as of this writing, but unfortunately it had no date on it.
Uh,
But anyway, it looked pretty recent.
okay.
So yeah, and then that's where the Docker comes in handy, because rather than changing your operating system on your computer, you can set up a box, a virtual box that has
So,
exactly.
in order to use Discourse, do you have to go and set up an account on Amazon or Microsoft Clouds so that you can spin up a VM on Docker and then just connect to it and use it?
So Discourse is just a forum that's just you can join.
Yep.
Uh, but
Docker is what I'm talking about.
yeah, you mean Docker? Yeah. So Docker, I think, is probably like, we downloaded the image for the from Ubiquity, right?
Well, Ubiquity is, well, I thought it was just a load, like an image file that you put onto the SD card, and that
Yeah,
the
yeah. So
that
that's
the
only the
Raspberry
ROS.
Pi 3, that the Raspberry Pi 3 loaded directly. When you're talking
Right.
about a Docker image, I thought you had to run it on a virtual computer, or you had to
Yeah.
load some sort of Docker software on your laptop, right?
Yeah. So I think they're talking about development, because even Tiziano, he works on his laptop in his instructions.
Yeah, but he talked about dual boot. He didn't talk about running in a virtual machine, or at least.
Yeah, yeah. So, but it's an option, and it's supposed to be easier and less work.
So I'm trying to figure out how to use Docker.
Yeah. So I
So do you
think
have to
it,
do
I
you have
think
to
it's
run some sort of a Docker program on your laptop so that you can run the load?
no. I think it's like an image that you run, and then it creates like a V-Box,
Okay.
and it's everything that they want. So like my SaaS software, that they give a free, they give you it, and they don't want to mess around with operating systems. So when you download this image and you run it, and then a box, it's literally a window on your computer,
Okay.
and it's got the SaaS system, the complex SaaS system, in exactly the Linux version that they want. And
So
you
you
got in Windows.
download that image, and the image downloads Docker or hypervisor or whatever it is that
Yeah,
you need to run it.
yeah, and so it's like almost turnkey, because an image with the ROS and the gazebo and everything together in it.
Okay. So that
Yeah,
sounds like the way to go for beginners is to find one of these images and just use the thing.
yeah, and I don't know if this exactly comes out as an image with SaaS, though. Basically, I downloaded something and I ran it, and this window popped up, and I remember running it, and it'll run on Windows, by the way, Microsoft Windows. You don't need any particular Linux.
So what I'm hearing is that this is how software development should go in the future, because keeping the programming software and like the programming software for PLCs and DCSs and keeping your PC running properly for CAD takes an enormous amount of effort, which is
Yeah,
just a waste of time.
yeah, yeah. So it's like that. Yeah, they dictate the environment. You can
Okay.
and then as soon as you turn it off, you got your computer back, your regular computer back, and in fact, it's in a window. But
Okay.
it's intensive. So in SaaS, I was running in Windows at some of my jobs. I was running. At a certain point, they switched from a very labor intensive thing of having SaaS on your PC to a virtual environment. So the one thing to remember is you actually can allocate how much memory and stuff,
Yep.
but it can hog, like, these are real. Most people never use the power of their super fast computer, quad core computer, but this does.
Yeah.
These
Right.
things do.
Right now, the only time I use the power of my computer is when I'm in Cura and I say render, and
Right, right, right.
it does its thing for like
Yeah,
30 seconds or a minute, and I hear the cooling
yeah,
fans come on.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay, all right. Well, that's cool. And this sounds like a great podcast. So I'm definitely that's going to be a. Um, I'm actually that's a great tip. So I'm gonna focus on that this week, and I'll put the research on the back burner. But I'll see how far I can get with these podcasts.
I'll see. I'm going to try watching the rest of the podcast as well, and I'm going to watch it without trying to follow along, because um, the problems that I ran into, again, that Braden Lane stopped supporting the I2C PWM board.
Right.
So we have to find a different one. And that's when I tried to figure out how they did it on the Sun Founder, and that's when I screwed up my environment. so, um, so you wanted to talk about something else. You said you were going to ask a question.
Oh, the glue gun.
Glue
Okay,
gun.
what do you with the glue gun you haven't used for 5 years, for 5 or 10 years?
No, no difference. Just make sure there's no dust on it. You plug it in. The cheaper ones don't even have a power button.
Mine doesn't have a power button.
You just plug it in. You leave it for like, I don't know, 10 minutes until it warms up enough, and then you squeeze. That's it.
Okay, so my problem is I'm squeezing, but it's not moving. I tried poking something in the hole while it was hot,
Hmm.
a but I've only got a fairly short, pointy thing. Maybe I'll try a
So
garbage.
you've got enough glue, like the cartridge thing for the glue gun to push through.
I have, yeah. I have the cartridge is only partly used, and I have
Okay.
uh, two more tubes.
Okay. So if the element, if you touch the end of the element and it doesn't burn
I
you,
could, I could smell it's burning. It's burning hot, and I could smell
okay.
dust.
So you can actually just push on the feed end. Like if the trigger mechanism isn't working properly, you can
Yeah.
just push on the end and it should push through.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
Um,
tried that. I tried rotating it.
I'm gonna see. I don't have my glue gun here.
Okay.
It's not right handy. So um, like really, I don't know how much time and effort it's worth. My wife uses a mini one. It's like she got it from the dollar store. It was like $3,
Right.
I think, and
Yeah,
it
that's
came
what I
with two
got.
or three glue sticks. So,
Right.
uh, so
So
obviously they're
maybe,
not real great. So if something broke, then it broke.
right. Yeah. So as of now, I can't twist it. I can't turn it, and the advancer isn't advancing it. It's kind seems to kind of
So
give in.
if you take it and you twist after it's
Yeah.
been running for 10 or 15 minutes, then it might be hot enough on the tip, but it's not hot enough on where it goes in because it's not melting.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I'll buy another glue gun. That
Okay.
thing. Oh, do you have a recommended one then? One with an on-off button sounds good.
I have never owned one that has an on-off button. They've all been. I think the most I've ever paid for a glue gun is like $15. So, um, I mean,
Okay.
I've probably thrown two of them away in like 20 years. So we don't use them
Okay.
much.
All right. All right.
I'm going to
That's good.
stop recording so that
Yes.
I don't forget to do that.